Hi, everyone. My guest today is Christine Russo Richardson. And this is a very interesting interview for me because Christine and I have a lot in common. First of all, we were both born and raised in Albany, New York, and she graduated a little bit later than I did, but she graduated from Albany High School, which is where I went to school, my sister went to school, my father went to school, and then, of course, she went on to graduate from Nazareth College of Rochester, and she spent a lot of years in Phoenix and St. Louis. She raised two children. She worked in education and healthcare nonprofits. And she also did additional studies at the master's level in pastoral care and counseling. And then she went back to Albany when she had to take care of her dad. And she stayed until her husband, her parents, and her daughter had passed away. So her son lives now in West Palm Beach, and that's why she moved to South Florida, and she spends a great deal of time being Nana to her 8-year-old granddaughter. But for me, she is the leader of my SOB club in Palm Beach County. So I'm very proud of her. She's taken on a big responsibility, and she's doing a great job. So I wanted to interview her so that all of you could find out a little bit about her and what she's doing. So, Christine, let me ask you, how did you begin your professional life? Was it in line with your dreams and goals from your college years?
Not exactly, Gail. When I was in college, I was studying history and political science and with a minor in philosophy, and I really had my eye on law school. And, in 1972, women were just getting into the professions, but still sometimes looking and saying, wait a minute, I really do want to be this, but I also want to raise a family and have a home life and a wonderful kind of family life, especially those of us who had wonderful family lives. So I really thought that I would go on to law school. I loved school. I am a perpetual student, and I love the atmosphere in the classroom, and I love learning, and so I really was looking forward to that. However, I then looked at some other options and took another path, and my first professional position was with the Girl Scout Council in the Albany, New York area. And I became a community organizer and executive with them and had a wonderful number of years of working to build the Girl Scout stamp and presence in many parts of the what we now call the Capital Region in the Albany area, and felt that it was just a perfect fit for me. I loved talking in front of groups. I love speaking in front of groups. I loved working with young women and their leaders, and I also was teaching all at the same time.
So, well, it's interesting because that you said that about law school, because I had wanted to go to law school not till much later, but I had seen so many things, and I thought, I'd be a darn good lawyer. But after going to get my doctorate for so many years, I just didn't want to go to school anymore. I loved learning, but I didn't like the structure of school, and I know it would even be that way more so in law school. So I thought, well, that's not something I'm going to pursue. But what do you consider then the most important skills that you've developed throughout your career? Because you've done a lot of interesting things. So how is that skill helping you in your new business profile?
Well, the thing that I try to remember at all times is that as I am approaching any task, the way for me to self-evaluate is to always go back to the mission statement. What is the purpose? What is the reason I'm doing this? And the reasons have never really been about me. The mission, no matter what you are approaching in life, and I have loved Stephen Covey's work over the years about organizational mission statements, personal mission statements, family mission statements, because it forces you to look clearly at the reason for your actions. Why are you doing what you're doing? And if you have that statement clear in your mind, then you can look at the work you're doing at that time and say, how is it furthering the mission? And so one of the threads that has been through every single opportunity I've had over the years has been my absolute requirement that we go back to the mission statement at all times, whether it was of a school or of a parish church that I worked for many years, or the substance abuse centers and hospitals that I've worked in. What was the mission? What is our reason for doing it? Because when you're clear about that, then the extraneous stuff falls away and you don't waste energy, resources, and effort in doing things that are not getting you to where you want to be.
Well, so bearing that in mind then, and because you were able to do that, what has been the most difficult career decision that you had to make, and how did you get through it?
Well, it was a career decision that was forced on me. I have to say, it wasn't my decision. At the time I was working, I had taken a position teaching in a small urban parochial high school, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved my colleagues. I loved the school. I loved what I was teaching. I certainly, first and foremost, loved my students. They were kids that were striving and working hard and came from, some of them from backgrounds that were very different than those of the people I'd worked with in the past. Unfortunately, at the time, we were facing some serious financial difficulties within the school, and there had to be a reduction in force. And even with close to 9 years experience, I did not have seniority. And so the decision to reduce the teaching staff by over 50% was made, and I unfortunately fell into that 50% category. It was very, very hard. Understandable, and I think I was even somewhat prepared for it. But what you're not prepared for is the psychological piece that hits you afterwards. That even though it was nothing I did, had nothing to do with my evaluations or the work I was doing, I still had been asked to leave a job. Not something that really helps you in your self-image and how you're growing. So I guess I am somewhat grateful that it happened at a time in my life when I was a little more secure in who I was, and I was able to really ferret out, okay, this had nothing to do with who I am and my competence in my job, but now I have to pick up and leave something I love and go to something else next. That's what I did.
So what is your biggest challenge in growing your business now? I mean, I assume that you rely on a lot from your past experiences, but what is the biggest challenge now?
Well, the biggest challenge now for me is really walking a twofold path, or a two-pronged path every single day. And that is to keep current, truly current in the area of substance abuse and recovery work, which is where I'm focused right now in terms of life skills and resiliency in families who have been affected by addiction and the trauma of addiction, while at the same time learning all about how to market myself. How do I build on my years of experience and past situations so that I am connecting with those in the community who are in need of the kind of support that I'm offering through the courses in which I am certified and the programs that I am certified to run.
Well, so tell us, I think you call yourself a behavioral health educator. So I had never heard that term before you. So tell us what a behavioral health educator does, and then what is the business climate like for those that are interested in this type of career?
Well, a behavioral health educator is usually someone with an education background as opposed to a therapy or therapist's background. And a behavioral health educator is responsible for presenting supportive programming, whether that be workshops, one-time workshops, a series of interactive program classes for those either in addiction recovery, mental illness recovery, those who are fighting mental illnesses, or sometimes even in school settings with youngsters, young people, both children and adolescents, who are looking for ways to support children who are trying to stay drug and alcohol free. So those are usually the places where you would find behavioral health educators in substance abuse, recovery programs and treatment programs in schools and in semi-educational settings, and sometimes in social service agencies where they may be the person responsible for running a support group of people who've been through trauma of some type, whether that be addiction or grief support. Any person who has been through trauma may need help in getting their everyday steps of life and life skills back on track in order to support their continuing recovery from that trauma.
So are budgets being slashed in those areas, or are they giving more funding to that, or what are the circumstances now?
Well, the circumstances now is that budgets are always being slashed. Budgets have been cut in schools, and not just in the area where I am, but in many, many areas, so that those kinds of programs, which usually come from an outside agency, contracting with a school, for instance, there doesn't appear to be a lot of money out there right now. However, what governmental money has dried up, a lot of foundations and social service provider agencies are picking up. And that has been a wonderful thing to see. There are a lot of those agencies that are contracting with independent contractors and solo consultants like myself, or people in partnership with another consultant, for instance. And as we are marketing these programs to the schools, we're also looking for the funding agencies who would support our work with either the schools or the substance abuse or mental health treatment agencies.
Fantastic. Well, you are in a very, very serious profession. I mean, you're dealing with people's lives, you're helping them, you're changing them. I'm sure you're frustrated by them at certain times. What are your passions?
Frustrated by them. That's interesting you said that. You have to really look seriously at what you're doing and have a real balance.
Yeah, you do. That's why I'm asking you, what are your passions so that, you can balance this out?
Well, believe it or not, Gail, I am a sports fanatic.
Oh, wow.
I am an absolute baseball nut. I am consider myself one of the great St. Louis Cardinals fans here in South Florida. Fell in love with the Cardinals many, many years ago. I have my dad to thank for that for many years. I love football. I love baseball. I enjoy watching tennis, play a little bit, not very much. My other passion is music. Usually, although in my earlier years, I did do some singing and sang with a choral group for many, many years. I love music and theater both. Had the thrill of a lifetime many years ago when I was able to be in the cast of a production of Eve Ensler's The Vagina Monologues, And I got to play the part that